morning, everyone, and welcome to the second in our series of interactive sessions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Vicky Brackett, and I'm the CEO for Owen Mitchell's Business Legal Services team. And as you all know from the invitation, today's focus is on our people, adjusting to a new imposed world, and how we can help ourselves and others to recognise what happens to us when we're suddenly met by something quite unexpected. It is something really important to our team at Owen Mitchell. We pride ourselves on client feedback, which emphasises not only our technical expertise, but also our human touch, our compassion and empathy. And there has never, ever been a time when compassion, support and well-being has been more important to both our colleagues at work, our clients and to our communities in which we work. So today, navigating us through the human reaction to the COVID crisis and helping us to understand how we can all make sense of what is a new normal is today's guest speaker, Tim Richardson. Tim, welcome. Tim joins me from Waverley, a boutique business that supports people in becoming better and more responsible leaders, and it helps teams in learning how to achieve really lasting change. And I think we'll all agree it's an opportunity at the moment to, whilst we're going through change, to really capitalise on some of the benefits that will eventually come out of this. Prior to joining Waverley in 2013, Tim was the Director of Leadership, Learning and Talent for PwC in the UK, so he's bringing a wealth of experience to this conversation. So welcome to you, Tim, and also a very happy birthday. Thank you for giving us your on this special day. And Tim, you're going to give us a short presentation of some of your thoughts and walk us through some concepts. And as a leader myself, I've really experienced over the last 3 to 4 weeks a whole range of personal challenges and emotions, actually, since lockdown, ranging in a need to be that superhuman leader to feeling totally inadequate in the face of something that's completely unknown to me and to my team and to the people that I'm trying to lead. So there are extraordinary challenges that are being thrown at us. So I think everybody on this call is going to really benefit from, I think when you and I had a conversation prior to this, kind of gave me a bit of comfort that some of that is normal and that's okay. And I think navigating us through that today will be really helpful. So I'll hand over to you. You'll do some talking, and then we'll come back and we'll do some Q&A. We've had some great questions, so we can go through those if we may. But if I can hand over to you, that'd be great. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Vicky. That's lovely introduction. Appreciate that. And welcome, everybody. Yeah, I'm sitting here in northeast of London, and the sun's out, and it isn't Christmas. I'm trying to navigate these slides and fast forward them. Hopefully they're going to work. I don't know about that, but we'll find out in a minute. Doesn't seem to be doing that. Maybe Lisa could fast forward a slide for me. Yeah, it isn't Christmas. It feels like it's Christmas. I don't know about you, but it feels like it's Christmas to me because I don't know what day it is and whether what's on the telly is meant to be on the telly or whatever. It feels like that extended holiday that we get over Christmas. It is Easter, though, and that's tomorrow, Easter weekend, and I guess many of us had Easter holidays planned. And you know what? We can't use them, and we're missing it. And a lot of people are in that state of missing things at the moment. So this talk and this thinking is birthed out of a number of conversations I had quite recently. One with a very dear friend of mine who's an actor, and of course his world has changed quite dramatically. And he said to me the other day, he said, "I'm feeling very lost." He said, "I feel like I've lost something. I'm grieving for something." He said, "I feel lonely. I'm wandering about aimlessly without really any sense of purpose." And it got me thinking that actually what's really going on here is we are all actually in a state of loss and in a state of change and massive disruption. And so one of the things that I want to do is to explore that sense of disruption and what's going on for us as we do this. So I'm going to see if I can take control. I've been given control, so let me see if that works now, and then see if it works. My computer. Awfully slow, these technologies. One of the things we're all having to get used to is this wonderful technology. doesn't seem to be working against us, so maybe you can take back control.
I think Lisa can probably help you there, Tim.
Yeah, she can take back control. You have control.
On the slide. You see the word.
Real for us. You have control. As human beings, we need certainty and we need safety. These are fundamental needs that we all know about. And most of the time, we don't have to think about them. We drive our cars with a degree of certainty and safety. We get up in the morning, we go to work. It's all become pretty subconscious. It's deep in our subconscious. However, the current upheaval has caused a massive shock to our systems. And things that we knew that were certain, things that we knew that were clear, are no longer the case. And actually, many of us feel unsafe. I was talking to a lady this morning as I walked my dog who works in a hospice near here. And I said, how are things? And she said, you know what, I feel a bit anxious and I feel a bit scared. So her safety has been taken away from her. And what's happened is our emotions kick in at this point. And those of you who know anything about emotional intelligence will know that what happens is we get hijacked by our subconscious, which goes into this overdrive of anxiety or fear or worry. And we get into something that we know as the flight or fight response to fear and anxiety and a lack of certainty. Now, it's hard for us, obviously, to fight back this virus because none of us knows quite what's going on in that. So what we are tending to see is a lot of people freezing or flight or running away. And that takes the form of denial. It takes the form of us pretending, if you will, that it's not really happening. And we'll explore that in a second or two. But what I also wanted to draw our attention to is that as human beings, our brain, our primitive brains, our limbic system, those of you who know anything about that, are programmed to process the negative much more quickly than the positive. This is really important in times of change, to understand that actually our brains go to the negative first. If you think about it, it's inevitable because it was the threat that causes us to run away and deal with uncertainty and threat more quickly, rather than wait, think about it, ponder, and then get eaten alive by the beast or whatever it was. The trouble is, right now, our negative brain are doing something which is known as catastrophizing things. We're taking things and we're blowing them out of all proportion. And this isn't helped by the media, it has to be said, that keep feeding us statistics and the negative. Certainly when this whole thing started, that was what was going on. It was a very negative wall-to-wall of gloom and woe to us. And we start catastrophizing when we're going to get this virus, what's going to happen. So with that in mind, if we could flick on to the next slide, Lisa, I want to talk a little bit now about something that many of us will know about, which is, if you will, the sort of change curve or the grief cycle, because it's the same pattern. And this is really the combination of our motivation level over time. And right at the start of this, when we get threats like this and imposed change, what we notice is we start denying it. This isn't happening. It'll return to normal sometime soon. And we've seen evidence of that. We've seen people having parties when they shouldn't be. We've seen people sunbathing on the beaches when they shouldn't be. We've seen people pretending that, the police won't catch them if they go to their holiday home in North of Scotland or whatever it is. This is a classic case of denial. And as humans, it's okay. This we know. This happens to us. But quickly from that, we go into a state of resistance, which is where our motivation begins to drop and our acceptance of this change drops. And we need to start with, we blame some people or blame something or somebody or some system. And then we take on avoidance behaviors. This is the resistance, the avoidance that's happening to us. So we just avoid it. So we meander about. if any of you have been prone to perhaps a slight temptation to eat a lot of comfort food at the moment. And every time you finish a piece of work, you go to the cupboard. I know I do. Digestive biscuits, wow. I never thought they could taste so good. Chocolate digestives. So we go into this sense of binge eating or wrong eating, binge watching. We shut down. Some of us just sort of go through days where we go, I don't know what I did today. I didn't do anything of any significance today. You know what? That's okay. It's okay to notice we're going through these avoidance behaviors. Some of us go into hyperdrive. We go into overactivity. We start doing massive projects that we put off, and we've suddenly cleared our entire garden in the first 2 days of this virus. This is all about avoidance. And we have to get through that. And we have to get through to the acceptance stage of, well, what is actually real? And in a minute or two, at the next slide, we'll come on to some processes for helping us with that. But we have to get to that stage of, you know what? There has to be some new ways of working right now. This very thing that we're doing right now, video conference. 4 weeks ago, probably none of us thought we'd be on a conference with 200 people talking about change, a video conference. I don't know about you, I'm having lots of these video conferences. It's a new way of working. And it's possible, and it works. And it's actually quite positive. There are other new positives that are beginning to emerge. You know, we've discovered kindness. We've discovered a community spirit that perhaps has been buried or hidden or forgotten. And this sense of positivity is going to pull us out, if you will, of this resistance. Resistance is good for change. We have to work our way through it and get into this acceptance stage. And then we move to commitment, learning about ourselves, adopting this new normal. Some of us will carry on from here, having lots of video conferences. Hopefully, and I had a call about this yesterday, many of the practices of kindness that we've seen about looking after neighbours and shopping for them and looking after people who are in, shall we say, less attractive professions, you know, the bin men or the delivery men or the postmen. You know what? Maybe we'll have some greater degrees of kindness for them. If you could click on the next slide, there's an arrow here. This is the way we go through this. We have to go from denial down through to commitment via resistance and acceptance. It's very unusual to go straight to commitment. Some people do. Some people move more quickly through this. But as we can see, if we click on the next click, thank you, Lisa, the work of Otto Scharmer talks about, firstly, we've got to let go of things. We've got to let go of what was. And we've got to get to a place of being real and being present with what is. And if you will, letting the future come to us, letting the experience be what it is. So a lot of us are beating ourselves up about this change or beating other people up. And you know what? It's okay to be confused. It's okay to be lost. It's okay to be anxious. And it's okay to stay with people and bring them through this, trying new things out. And some people come through it more quickly than others. You know, I have a teenage son who's at university at the moment. I want him to come home. He's staying there because he's got work to do. I think he can't possibly be safe because he's on his own in his house. He doesn't really care. He's quite happy. He's doing his thing because he's gone right through much more quickly than I might. Through to, yeah, this is a new normal. I can deal with it. I get to play computer games with my friends remotely. And it's acceptable practice now, whereas in the past it was always not. Let's go to the next slide if we can. I'm sorry about this, but my computer seems very slow in dealing with it. And I just wanted to help us through a process of growing about ourselves through learning. And how we learn, and this is what's really important for us in this particular time. We learn by noticing first, by questioning, by exploring, and then trying new things out. So under noticing, if you could click the next button there. The first thing we need to do is notice our emotional state, name our anxiety, name our lack of certainty or our fear, or indeed our joy or our excitement. Some people love change. Notice our behaviors. Perhaps some of our behaviors and some of our physical state is slowing us down. We feel heavy. But rather than just exist through it, we start naming it. We start accepting it. And then we move into this state of questioning and thinking, what is really going on? What am I catastrophizing? What tensions am I trying to hold? Some people are now trying to hold on to this tension of needing to be superhuman. I've got to look after my kids. I've got to educate them. They're now at home. I've also got to work from home. I've got to have video conferencing. I've got to prepare the food or whatever. I've got to be kind of superhuman. People keep wanting a piece of me. Who wants a piece of me? All these different meetings I'm going. Start questioning this. Start questioning what values I should pay attention to. The values that are suddenly emerging for me around care, around community. And notice how those values can actually draw me into this new state of acceptance of the new normal. We start reframing. We start looking at our boundaries and how we redefine them. We start saying, actually, I'm not going to go on calls all the time. I'm going to limit that. I am going to put some decent work clothes on rather than just loaf about in my pajamas. I am going to keep the weekend. It's very tempting now to work from home, to be working from home all the time. I am going to have an Easter weekend. I am going to have boundaries that my children or my family can cope with. I am going to change some boundaries. I'm going to create some new ones around my time and my energy. Have some games times and things of that nature. I'm going to explore how the story could be written in a positive way rather than a negative way. As we said earlier, kindness, communities. Noticing the fact that when I slow down, different things happen to me. When I walk in the woods near where I live now, I'm surprised by the fact I don't have any aircraft flying over me. I live on the edge of London, and constantly aircraft are queuing up to get into Heathrow. Well, they're not now. Slowing down is lovely. I hear things I didn't hear before. And then I can start applying new ways of doing things. So, for example, something that we call the observed self, or as I call it here, seeing myself in action. Noticing ways of doing that. So, for example, at the end of the day, beginning to notice times when, or think back, what was I doing? That was good. That was a great moment. Or I'm really disappointed with that. I spoke to somebody the other day who said, I just had a day where I've spent the whole day loafing about and I'm disappointed. But tomorrow, it'll be different. I'm going to really go for it tomorrow. We can start moving towards our values. We can start being more kind, more considerate. We can start being more vulnerable, perhaps, with people. Actually saying, you know what, I'm anxious. I don't know what's going on. And then finally, we make sense. And then we create the headspace for learning. And we notice new habits, a new rhythm. And you know what? We notice how during this time of change, we dug deeper into ourselves and found stuff that surprised us. We found a sense of calmness instead of panic. We found a sense of reassurance. We found a sense of us being able to reassure others and diffuse some of their concerns through this time of change, through this disruption. So there we go. That's a model. I'm going to pause there. We've got some practical things that we could say right at the end, but we might leave it there for some questions. We'll leave the model up for the moment. I'm sure there's some questions coming in, but I'm handing over to you, Vicky, now for the moment.
That was brilliant, and you ought to be a Radio 4 presenter. I was drawn into your so thank you for that. And although I had a little preview of it yesterday, it reassured me once again that what I'm thinking and feeling is okay, and that actually I don't need to be that superhuman that you described, as we have all become classroom teachers as well as home workers in a very short period of time. I was just reflecting while you were talking about just the different stories we've heard across our business about how people have adapted to this, and there's been really crazy ones, but there was a brilliant one that we had a Twitter feed. One of our CSR panel sent out a Twitter feed on Friday to just say, how are people going to sort of really find time at the weekend to reflect and be alone? And one of our staff replied, and it was brilliant. She said, I've worked all week at my dining table. It's chaos. It's everything's all over the place. And I think we can all imagine that. We've all got the dining room image in our head. And she said, I'm just going to pack it all up. I'm going to close it, put it all in a box, move it out, and on Monday I'm going to unpack it again. And you got that real pictorial sense of her packing it away and finding that time, noticing that she'd been in chaos, I suppose, and coming through that. So you can see this coming to life with people as they're adapting to different ways of working. But we actually just had a question when you were going round your little circle there, which yesterday you and I were talking about that being actually a really good framework for one-to-one conversations when we're trying to support people through, just working them around that circle and not recognising where they are. And the question was an interesting one. It was whether the model that you've got up there would apply to a business that's still trading and maybe being deemed to be not proactive enough. Is it going through does a corporate go through that same sort of cycle? And I suppose because it's a big bunch of individuals, probably yes. But what's your thoughts on that?
I don't know what the person means by not being proactive enough. But yeah, as corporates, I mean, businesses that actually get good at noticing what's going on and not knee-jerking all the time, but bringing it to the surface and actually doing that genuine reappraisal and questioning and thinking will probably survive and thrive much more through this. Yeah. I know for our business, we've been thrown into that sense of disruption, and we're having to think, well, what new ways could we have of actually doing our business right now? But then also, how might this actually encourage us to reframe the future ways we do our business? And the models, I know you, Irwin Mitchell, are having to think about that too. Yeah. And I know a lot of businesses are now having to think, well, we just got kind of comfortable and cozy in the way we were, and now we're having to challenge that. So I think senior leaders or leaders of businesses have a real responsibility to certainly do those first three steps quite intentionally, really think carefully and don't rush into it, but just think, actually, what are we doing here? We notice this. How are our people responding to this? Are they themselves up for this change or this, and how do we help them through it? So I think the answer is yes, businesses should be effectively applying this model to themselves for the future.
And very personally, I think you're right, and almost to go back, because what certainly my experience, our experience at Irwin Mitchell has been, is that this has just been an accelerant to things we were talking about. We ought to be more remote, we ought to be more agile, and we were working towards that, and suddenly change happened. It was imposed on us, and it was like a fuel can being poured on, going, right, here we are, now we're going to have to deal with some of that. So I think the advice to go back, notice what happened, question and think about that, and reflect and explore is probably really vital, because there is that sort of risk. And I wonder whether in your introduction, I think the way you described your business to me was that embedding lasting change. And I suspect if we don't go back and do some of that thinking, there's a risk that it becomes quite temporary. And I think one of the things that's forefront of my mind is, what are we learning through this? And let's not just automatically fall back into what was comfortable when we come out of this, which I think is your opportunity point, isn't it?
It is, very much so. And the lady from the hospice this morning, and when I was walking to the woods, she said, "Well, it's going to be different. Some things are going to have to change when we come out of this." And I think she was talking about sort of very macro things around society, but it was a really interesting point. She's saying stuff is going to have to change, and so I think for us to be intentional about that and really look at, see, what did we actually learn here, and how can we keep what was good about that, and what we discovered about ourselves, and we dug deeper into ourselves, and we went, you know what, actually there's a vein of kindness that perhaps we should use more in meetings. We should perhaps be more more genuinely interested in whether people are well or not, because you know how we normally are. We just say, "How you doing?" and everybody goes, "Yeah, fine."
Yeah, and on we move on. It's taken on a whole new meaning, hasn't it, that question? And I think, and to be fair, I think we are all asking it with real sincerity and meaning. It isn't just a platitude as perhaps it was originally for many of us. I think it's important. We have had some questions in, Tim, and a couple on here that really resonated with me as a leader of people. One's around supporting young people who are dealing with change. Don't know from the question whether that means the sort of children going through change, but certainly I think within the working environment, almost as generational differences. You talked about your son being, completely having accepted this in his own way and getting on with it, and you're sort of thinking, oh, that's not quite how I'd have dealt with it, and seeing my own teenagers go through it, I'm seeing that. But some of our younger working colleagues, and I think people on the call will have this issue as well, is, they're living alone, their accommodation's relatively small, they haven't got perhaps even the luxury of a garden to go out into and get that fresh air, and finding this, whilst they're probably quite adept at change at that generation, but actually it's an imposed lockdown that's very, very isolating. So how can we as leaders and people in a business support those younger people getting through, well, anybody really getting through that change? I think it's, we're doing it in very different, very challenging circumstances.
I think it's the first point is you've got to be with people through it. So now clearly you can't physically be with them, but you can do, as we're doing here, remote stuff. And I guess just being available and being accessible and saying, look, it's okay to have a call, and actually also have a call about nothing in particular. Yeah. So, I with another hat, I have a small team doing something else in the service industry, and we have some young people. And one of the young people in this cafe team that we run, she's a 15-year-old schoolgirl, and she comes in on a Saturday, and she's loved the calls that we've had with the team. Yeah. And she just doesn't stop talking, and she takes us around her house, and she shows us her photos of this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, wow, this is just her way of staying connected.
Yeah, being part of something. And people are reacting very. I'm quite enjoying the nose into people's houses. Even on the news in the morning, I'm quite having a good old look at what people have got sitting behind them. But I think for me, it's that really emotional response as a human. You talked about kindness, and I think kindness has absolutely become very prevalent. But also, it's a great leveler, isn't it? Suddenly seeing into someone's home and being part of their family, pets arriving on video conferences and kids. And I remember there was something on YouTube or somewhere where that very, very famous clip where the child came in and the nanny sort of crept in because it was forbidden. Yeah. That's gone. I mean, the kids are creeping in all the time. So I think that change in behaviour is really palpable at the moment. And one theme, I think, that comes through some of the other questions is signs of people starting to struggle. So again, remotely picking up, because behaviourally, of course, when we're together, you can see people's behaviour, but actually much, much harder remotely to pick up on when people are starting to struggle. Any advice on how we might spot that struggle that's going on and, broach that conversation as leaders with our team and people that we are working with?
As you say, it's harder because you're not physically with them, and you won't see stuff during the course of the day. I guess if somebody doesn't join on calls perhaps as often as others, or that particularly quiet. I know the trouble with video conferencing is that extroverts just keep talking all the time and introverts can't get in. But if somebody is noticeably quieter than they would normally be, or that they themselves are, using examples of, well, yesterday was a pretty low day. So, my colleague who's an actor who said, I just spent the day wandering around. I didn't really know what to do. Okay, he was vulnerable enough early on to admit that. I think, the context of, in the past, we send emails to each other, and I don't know whether we actually ever read the email properly. We often read the topic or the subject, but you can tell a lot by somebody's email, whether they're quick, terse, short, rambling, whether they're at wrong times of day, for example.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries about senior leaders writing to people at the wrong time of day, or indeed people responding at silly hours, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
All of which was probably really relevant in the old world, but it's just become so much more, which is an example of my sort of let's not lose some of this, because I think it's probably how we should have behaved and noticed and watched and, as you say, found that headspace, noticed what was going on around us a little bit more. We were moving at that very, very fast pace, and to some extent, while certainly I personally feel the pace has picked up because there's so many questions to answer, and we don't have the answers for those questions. But equally, there's a sort of slowdown as well, in the sense of I've got all this time, and that's dangerous. You talked about working outside of hours and weekends and finding that thing, but I think that whole taking control ourselves of what's important to us, finding that space, setting those boundaries is becoming really important. But I think we need to take that into the new world with us and not forget how that's, the value of that.
I think so. I've heard countless examples. I've probably done it myself in the past of, in the days when bosses would send emails and expect immediate responses at silly hours of the evening or at weekend. And maybe now we'll be a little bit more tolerant of not getting an immediate response. And those of us that are prone to want to do that, maybe, as you say, holding that tension between we can be slow, but also we can be agile in using video conferencing as well.
Yeah. And one question that sort of made me smile. How can I get better dealing with things, dealing with how to cope faster? So that sort of pace. I don't feel, you talked about that desire to be superhuman. There's a real pace question in that. It's sort of backtoned to that for me, which is I need to be suddenly good at being a leader in this new world, and how do I suddenly get there all of a sudden? What are your reflections on that mentality? Because there's clearly something going on there in terms of tone and ambition.
I think one of the it's about energy and the amount of energy that you have and how much of that you use and how you restore and replenish that. So if you want to move faster and coping through this, picking up that energy. So, eating wisely, exercising properly, and at a sensible time to keep your energy levels high. Because when your energy levels are higher, or your mental energy, your physical and your emotional energies are higher, or you've got more of it, as it were, you feel like you're more in a state of buzz. Things are happening, and that sense of then noticing and questioning will become more natural and more spontaneous. I think what the downside is, if you notice that your energies are running low, your mental capacity, you're not got focus. I mean, one of the things that I've put on the next slide when we'll just finish off with that is, finding things that you can really focus on. So one of the things that I've been immensely impressed with recently is noticing how many people have picked up creativity habits or hobbies and things like that they never used to do. So people are doing painting, people are making things. And it's a focus, and it's a way of channeling my mental energy. And actually, when I've got more mental energy, you'll find that actually you can cope with some of these disruptions, whereas if you haven't, you tend to just sort of meander a bit.
Unfortunately,
that sense of focus is really
hobby in our house is baking, and that feeds onto your chocolate digestive thing, which I did recognise. So we just need to have copious amount of cake constantly, which I'm not sure is going to be a good thing for us in the long run. So the Brackett family definitely needs to get their grip around the intake of carbohydrate and sugar. And before we go on to, you've mentioned your last slide, and there are some practical tips on that, so I do want to give that the airtime that it needs. I think that was a really useful end. There's one question here I think would just lead us nicely into that someone's asked, whether it's at work or in a home setting, what are the top 3 tips? And there might not be 3, there might be 1, there might be 2, there might be 4, of being a good leader during a lockdown or a crisis. Now, of course, we've never had this before, Tim, so
no.
Advise on that. But what are the top 3 things to remember, which I suspect are things we should always be doing anyway as leaders? So what's your advice on that one?
I would say the availability and accessibility within the boundaries that you set yourself as the leader, but being available and accessible and being able to connect. And that means not doing tasks all the time, but connecting at not just a head level with people, but at that heart and emotional level with people. So being genuinely interested, and yourself being genuinely open and vulnerable. If, we're all watching Boris Johnson in hospital, he didn't have that in his plan. As far as he's concerned, he's a superhero, and now he's not. And he's having to be genuinely vulnerable in that. And I think as leaders, we can pretend, or we can be honest, and we can say, you know what, we really don't know what's going to happen next. But we're in this together, and we're connecting, and we're trying to balance the tensions. And what we're exposed to right now, going right back to the early slide, it's not certain, it's not fixed, it's a tension. And the thing with tension is it's both and. There's chaos, and we need some certainty. There's all of that, and we've got to be able as leaders to say, you know what, it's both and we'll find answers maybe in time, or maybe we won't find answers in time.
I think that vulnerability has just been so heightened for me in the sense that we don't have all the answers. We never have all the answers, but sometimes we pretend we do because it's a situation that we've seen before. We really don't, and it's okay to admit that we don't. And I think it's also accelerated, again, using that phraseology around empowerment. So we've had to ask others for help, and we've had to ask as a team. So again, all of those great behaviours that we learn at leadership school and management school and working with people, they suddenly had to really happen, and that real genuineness of us as individuals, I think, has really come out. And I've definitely noticed with my team the human response, the desire to help, people wanting to be alongside us and helping us make those decisions. So it's been, that's been a real positive from my perspective. And I think one of the things you said to me, just to link us into the slide and some of the practical points that people could perhaps take away from this. You said yesterday, you sometimes stuck in your curve that you had on that earlier slide, and you said that finding acts of kindness and positivity is a way to pull us out of there. And I sort of took that away very personally to think about how I can be more kind and more positive to everyone around me, and actually look for it in others for myself as well. And I took that away as a very, very practical point from our conversation. But do you want to take us on to that much Harold's last slide now, which I think has got a few tips on there for the audience just to think about?
Many of these we've covered. These are just some high-level thoughts I've had more since. But as we said, make sure you're in control of your boundaries, and be aware that it will be easy to dilute yourself, as I call them, the attention robbers. Yeah. So at the moment, I don't know about you, but I've been given, 20 different video clips of how to manage your day properly when you're in isolation. And you think, I better look at that. And people sending me video fun clips of this, that, and the other. And you think, well, that's nice. But actually, you do too many of that, it's a bit of a robber of your attention.
Yeah.
As we said, love yourself. Don't be beating yourself up despite your inadequacies or failings, and don't be perfect. Breathe. Enjoy the slow. I mean, it is so refreshing in some ways. It's scary. Most of us that have been running at 150 miles an hour in our lives are suddenly running at 20 miles an hour, and we don't know what to do. But look at it this way. Imagine somebody's given you, instead of a sports car, they've given you a Piaggio scooter, which only does 25 miles an hour. And you've just got to get on that and enjoy the freedom that one of those little Vespas might do as opposed to your fast car. We talked about energy there. I was mentioning that earlier. There's a point further down there. Remind yourself of your values and your sense of purpose in your life story. A lot of people right now are asking, well, I had this plan and now that's gone out of the window. Well, maybe it hasn't. Maybe it's still there. Maybe it's just been paused. And remind yourself of what your story and your narrative is about. And if you haven't got that, then use this time to begin to process that. We've said, practice the end of the day seeing yourself. When was I most distracted? I noticed this. When I was most upbeat, I noticed this, what I'm grateful for. We've talked about cultivating creativity, perhaps, or new hobbies, making bread, if you say practicing making cakes or whatever it is. I think there's a number of other things that everybody will have found, I'm sure. The critical thing is that, if anything, this is an opportunity for us to learn as humans rather than to freeze and to run away. This is one of those things that we have to embrace. We cannot avoid it. There is no way you can avoid this. Yeah. So this is one of those lovely things, moments in life. We will never, ever live through this again, I'm sure. I hope not. So let's learn and let's see what we can take forward into the new, different normal.
Post-COVID is the phrase, I think, that everyone's using when we finally get there. Tim, I took from all of that concept of just noticing what's happening, and it's okay. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a great day. I think I was talking to my own team as well, just on the energy level piece about this is a marathon we're going to go through. I know that's the cliche, but those energy levels need to be constant throughout this. And just keeping those up and using each other to make sure when we're feeling down, we share that vulnerability and buoy each other up. And I think as a team, that's a really effective way of making sure we get through this with the energy levels that you've described. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm hoping I've got great value out. I'm hoping everyone else that's been listening in has. And thank you very much for giving up your time, particularly on your birthday. Thank you so fully. I think that was really helpful indeed. And, it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody on the call that has dialed in. I hope you found that informative, and we will look forward to seeing you. It's our regular spot, 11 o'clock on Thursday next week. So thank you very much, and thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Well, everybody, have a good Easter weekend.
Have a great Easter.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.